What we're going to do first is we are going to make the screen um, one that's like our workspace. So when you go up to your taskbar up here, I want you to go to Window and I want you to go to Workspace. And you're going to go to, you can either do Layout, Printing and Proofing, Tracing, Typography. Any of these are fine. So the reason why you want to do that is because it will show up with all your taskbars here that you need. So the most important things that you're going to be using are your layers palette, your stroke palette, and you're not really going to need your swatches at this time, but you want to make sure your toolbar is showing on the side here. If it's not showing, sometimes it's because you need to go to your window and select it, Tools, Default, and that is about it for your workspace. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to go ahead and open up a croquis. So the reason why we're doing a croquis is because you want to make sure that when you are building your flats, you're building them all at the same scale. This is a really important thing to remember, especially when you're creating things that you're going to show to an employer, because if you do not have the correct dimensions, what's going to happen is that you're not going to have any sense of scale and what the proportions are from one point to another. So on this layer, we're going to go ahead and we're going to create our guides. So you're going to go up to View and you're going to go to Rulers and you're going to say Show Rulers. The reason why you want to show your rulers is so that you can drag and drop your guides. So I like to start over here on the right. What I'm doing is I'm holding my mouse down and I'm not letting go. I'm just clicking and dragging all the way till I get to this center point here. And I'll do the same thing with this top ruler. So I'm doing it right here where the shoulders meet the neck. I'm doing it where the neckline is in terms of where it hits the collarbone. I'm going to do where the armpits are. I'm going to do the waist. I'm going to do well, this is the natural waist. This is, or the true waist. This is like the natural waist. And then this is the hips. I'm not really worried about anything down here because we're going to start off with doing a t-shirt. So once you've done that, I might want to actually put this here. If you hear snoring in the background, that is Junior. Okay. So now I want to show you guys on Google. If I do a t-shirt, if I just look up a t-shirt, this is kind of the epitome of what a flat means. So these are accurate in that when you're showing a t-shirt, you're going to have your collar here and you're still going to see the back of the shirt. It's not like it's like this is incorrect, right? Because you could tell that they cut this back neck out. So flat technically just means flat. It means it's straight on it's like you got to think of it as like a scan of a t-shirt or a scan of a dress or whatever it is. So as you can see, you're always going to show the back here. So what you can do just for reference is you can always drag and drop a t-shirt on your Illustrator file just so that you can look at it for reference depending on the type of shirt. So this is just a basic t-shirt that we're going to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go on to my next layer here. So go ahead and lock this layer. And it's important that you lock this layer because when you start to make new strokes or effects, you want to make sure that it's not on this bottom so that we can eliminate it when it comes time. So now you're going to take your pen tool, and if you guys remember, The pen tool has two options. So it has a fill option and a stroke option. At this point, you're not going to worry about your fill. You're just going to worry about your stroke. And when I'm creating a flat, I always like to make my flats like a really obnoxious color. And I do that because it's easier for me to see what's going on, especially when I'm working on multiple layers. So I'm just zooming in by hitting the command and the plus sign. And what you're going to do with your pen tool is I want you to be as quick as possible while still maintaining a neat stroke that kind of gives you the idea of where your t-shirt is in relationship to the figure. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just kind of creating a basic outline of a t-shirt. And you don't have to use the curve tool for this because what we're going to do is correct it. Okay, so once you've done that, and I'd like to note, I'm going to step backward for a second so you can see this. I'd like to note that you always want to make sure that you're closing your outline. So I know that this is closed. If I drag my pen tool over here to where this anchor point is, I'm going to see that little circle. That little circle is telling me that this is closed. Take your white arrow tool, and your white arrow tool, you're going to be allowed to start manipulating these points to make them into curves. So like right here, for instance, say I want this to be smoother. I can pull this inward. I can move this a little bit. I can take my handles out. My handles are these little things that I have on the side here. And maybe I want this to be in a little bit more. Maybe I want my sleeve to be a little looser looking. This I'm going to bring down. This I'm going to bring up. I'm going to click on this point. So whenever you have a point like this or an angle like this, if you take your white arrow tool and you hit this circle and you hold your key down, you hold your mouse or your touchpad down and you just pull it out, what happens is it'll turn it into a curve, which is nice when you're doing a flat because you can just do these points, and then from these points you can round them out. Or what you could do is you could add anchor points. I'll show you how to do that in a second. So I'm going to pull this down, and then I'm going to take my point and curve that up. To add an anchor point, I'm going to take my pen tool, I'm going to right click, and I'm going to do add anchor point tool. I might put this over here on this path, and the reason why you want to do that is so that when you go back to edit it, so I'm on the white arrow again, it just kind of allows you to get maybe a smoother transition in an area where you didn't have one. So I'm gonna just I'm gonna take this off, and maybe I'm gonna move this down. Now the other thing I want to show you guys is how to use this as a way to get a joined path. So sometimes when you're manipulating things and like erasing things, you'll find that you're going to have 2 points here that are not connected, and maybe you want to connect them. Instead of like worrying about trying to do a path or like create another line, what you can simply do is you can take your white arrow, you can create a box around the 2 points you want to join, and then you can do Command J, or you could do right click join, and what that's going to do is it's going to join those 2 paths together, which is a really convenient and easy tool to use. I'm still not really loving this. It still feels a little awkward to me. So what you might want to do too at this point is take your layers and take your eye off of this top layer so that you can kind of start to maybe make this even a little bit more successful. So for me, my big problem here is that I just really don't like there we go. Command J, I'm joining these 2 points together if they'll join. There we go. So the next part I want to talk to you guys about is how to make it so that you can reflect your t-shirt without having to do all these other things going on here. So I'm going to turn this back on. It's okay too if like on here this shirt is going in here. I mean, you could bring it out if you want. You don't have to. It's just a matter of preference as long as it's in a general scale to what your other flats would be. So what you're going to do now is you're going to, if you've done a side and you're really excited about the way this, I don't know if excited is the right word, but you're happy with the way this side looks, what you're going to do is you're going to take your pen tool and you're going to do the add anchor point tool and you're going to put it right here in all the central places. You're going to take your white arrow tool and you're going to make a box around the spot that you don't want. And then you're going to hit delete. And that should just leave me with one side of the t-shirt. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my black arrow and I'm going to select this one side. I'm going to copy it, Command C, Command V, paste it, reflect. And you're going to say vertical. Okay. So what we're going to see now, if I take my eye, go to my layers, take my eye off the layer 1, if I zoom in, what I'm going to see here is that these 2 points aren't connected, and then up here it's kind of a mess. So to fix that, I'm going to first take my white arrow tool, and I'm going to select all these points on my neckline here. So I made a box around all of this part, and I'm going to hit delete. And I'm going to right click pen tool and connect this point with this point, okay? Then what I'm going to do down here is similar. I'm going to take my white arrow tool, I'm going to select both points, and I'm going to delete it. So what you're going to get right now is your pen tool then, and do the same exact step that you did at the top on the collar. And it'll look like this. Turn on your layers, take your pen tool, add an anchor point here to the center and to the center again, and then just take your white arrow tool, move it down, and then move it back up. Move it down, click on the point you want to move down with your white arrow tool, and then use this circle, drag it back up. Okay, so now if I take my eye off of this tool, you will see that I have a nice symmetrical outline of a t-shirt. So now at this point we're going to go ahead and we're going to create another layer, because if you guys remember, I had told you that you want to keep your fill layer at the bottom, and you'll understand why in a minute. So this layer is going to be used for details that we might need. Primarily on this, it would be the neckline, but sometimes it could be like a collar or pockets or something like that. These are secondary design details. Well, actually this is kind of functional, but same thing. In looking at this as well, I don't know if I love how straight across these sleeves are, but for now I'm going to leave them. Situation is you can also take your ellipse tool and you can create a circle. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my pen tool, add anchor points right here and right here. Take my white arrow tool, select this top, and delete it. Now I'm going to take my black arrow tool, because if you remember, the collar has this, let's zoom out so you can see it a little bit. It's like this. So you have this extra ring here and this extra ring here. So I'm going to copy this, paste it, hold my shift key down, and extend it out. That keeps it to scale. And I'm going to do the same thing in the back. So I can take this, I can hold my, or I can do Command C, Command V. And basically what I would do at this point is take my add point tool, put it here on this path, here on this path, white arrow tool, subtract, white arrow tool, subtract, and now I have a back and a front collar. So if I take my eye off, it looks like this. So the third layer we're going to create now is going to be for all of your seam lines, your top stitching, etc. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my third layer, and this I'm going to make my stroke a little bit thinner because it's a secondary information. So I'm taking it down to 0.5, and I'm going to take my pen tool and I'm going to make my shoulder seams. Copy, paste, transform, reflect. And then you can go ahead now and you can add your top stitching. Okay, so now what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and add your top stitching. Maybe you have some extra lines you want to add on the sleeves. What you're going to do is just take your pen tool, and what you might need to do here is go back to this first layer, select this point, copy it, and then take it over to the layer 4, paste it. And I'm going to take this line and I'm going to make it really thin. I'm going to make it like 0.5, maybe even thinner, maybe 0.25. And I'm going to duplicate it by hitting the, if you hit the Option key or the Alt key, it'll let you copy a layer or copy a object. I'm going to click on both, Command C, Command V. And then I'm going to do the same thing here at the bottom. Copy it, copy it, paste it, move it to 0.25,